Hi, my name is Kathleen Lugrich, and I'm the Senior Director of Historical Initiatives and Educational Development at the Army Historical Foundation. And today I'm speaking with Lynn Lang about her uncle, Colin Kauffman, who served during World War II. Hi, Lynn. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello, Kathleen. It's my joy.
Can you start by telling me a little bit about your uncle and your family?
I will. During the war, my mother went back to teaching, and while during the week, I would live with my grandmother and then go home for the weekends. And my Uncle Co was still home, and I just adored him. He was so handsome, and I remember him clearly. He was always fun, and he was engaged at the time, and he'd be putting on his shaving lotion to go out with his Jeanettes, and so forth. And I just idolized him. And then when he was killed, which is so interesting because when he went down the stairs, he said to my grandmother, "You don't have to worry about old Co. You know, Co's always known how to take care of himself." And his letters refers to that all along. And the war was essentially over. He was killed in what was known as the mop up. It was maybe 2 weeks before the surrender. And so he came that close to making it home. But, my memories are just wonderful. And when we got the notice that he had died, I felt, I mean, not only was the family devastated, but I felt so badly that he died so far from home. And I wanted at that time, and it's never left me, to take ashes from the home in Yardley and take them, find his grave in wherever, and take him there. But I didn't know where he was. So this, it was number one on my wish list for my entire life. And I began about 20 years ago, I guess, doing research on Patton, assuming I know he was in Europe, and assuming he was probably with Patton. And I'm very connected to West Point, and we have a tailgate family. And one day I was doing this research on Patton, and an email comes in from one of my West Point tailgate friends, and he sends me this article on Patton. And I said, "Well, how strange you send me this." And I told him the story. And he said, "Well, bring me the ashes. I'll take them next time I'm over there." I said, "I don't know where he is." And immediately after that, I get an email from a friend who knows nothing about anything. And she said, "There's this new World War II museum that just opened in Washington. Do you have any family?" And I went on the museum and I found him, and he's buried in the Lorraine Cemetery, and had the marker and so forth on there. So now I know where he is. And maybe a month after that, I go out to dinner with my cousin who is moving. Now I have many cousins. My mother was one of 8. And after dinner, she pulls out these letters from my uncle to my grandmother and said, "My mother had these. I think you're the one that should have them." But she didn't know this story. So that's very profound. So I have all these letters, and for me, they're treasures. And yet I felt I shouldn't be keeping these. I have one of my younger cousins, my first cousin's son, who's so interested in the family history. So I sent him all the letters. And a month or so later, I get these pages back. I don't know if you can see these or not.
I can.
Oh, with where he followed the dates of the letters and traced everywhere the first infantry was at that point. So now I have maps. I have the whole itinerary. Even this postcard, if you can see that postcard, that he sent it. He said, "A bunch of flowers from a little old lady in Belgium," or something like that. But anyway, that's pretty much the story up until then. And then one day, my wonderful daughter comes home for it was around Mother's Day. Trying to get through this. And she said, I have a Mother's Day present. She said, actually, it's Christmas and New Year's and birthdays and everything. And she said, I have some clues. And she gives me this jar of French mustard. And so I'm thinking something culinary. And then she gives me this jar of salt. And it's fleur de sel from France. And she said, well, do you have any ideas? And I said, well, I'm not even going to tell you what I'm thinking. So I'm going back to the culinary thing. And then she gives me a book that says Visitor's Guide to Normandy.
To the D-Day beaches.
And inside said Croissant. And so we wound up going to France. We took the ashes.
Soil,
I'm sorry. Took the soil. And after 78 years, I welcomed him home.
Aww.
Sorry.
That's a sweet story.
I keep thinking by now I should be able to get through this dry-eyed, but I never.
Oh no. We daughters have that effect on our moms.
So that's pretty much, it was utterly remarkable. And when we went there, we followed my cousin's maps and went to visit the various places where he had been. And then the day that we went, it was raining and so forth. And when we got to the cemetery, the rain had ended. There were these dark, ominous clouds with the sun coming through. It was just magical. And I have a thing about trees. Trees are almost human to me. And his gravesite is under this huge canopy of this tree, which had special significance for me. And it was just a gorgeous setting. And it could not have been more wonderful, all of it. What we discovered when we got there is how much more the French people appreciate the sacrifice than we Americans do. I mean, they could not have been. When we got to the cemetery, they drove us out to the site. They had an American flag and a French flag. And they had sand from the soil in Normandy, which they rubbed on the stone to bring the name out. And I thought, how wonderful of them to do all this. And they were so appreciative after all these years. So, and, you know, through his letters, as he said, you know, he could never say where he was, but he would say afterwards where he had gone through, and he would make comments, you don't have to worry about me. I'm fine. I'm taking care of myself. But then he would put in, you know, this is no picnic. As when he went through these towns that were totally decimated and so forth. So I wish I knew more of his story, because this is actually his story. And, you know, his letters could reveal very little. He was injured, he wasn't shot, but he was injured working and had to have surgery. So there was that one part, he was back in England for a short while he had the surgery, and then he returned to the front. But other than that, his letters don't really give you any information other than where he was. As far as, and I think he purposely tried to make light of, you know, how.
I saw that in some of his letters, saying like, it looks like you people think the war's over. It's not.
Yeah. But I truly feel he was very concerned with people at home worrying about him, and he wanted to make sure his life was good when we all knew it was not.
Yeah.
But I think that was it. But I wish I had more memories of him or more of his things.
And what advice would you share with someone who's trying to track down their own family in Europe or from World War II?
Well, I would say, for one thing, the information is far more available now. Now that you have the Army Museum and things like that. And so I would say, you know, start there and see if you can find a base. I think that information is so available now that everyone would probably already know, where everybody was and what the situations were and et cetera. So I think it would be a much easier road, but the number one is don't ever give up.
There you go.
78 years and I got there.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and your family story with me today. And I'd like to invite anyone who listens to this story to remember the life of Colin Kauffman, who died during World War II. And before we close our conversation, is there any key message you want to share with people or something you want them to remember?
My journey, I suppose the highlight was the actual application of the soil in the ground. That entire journey was awesome. And the trip to France and standing in all these sacred places and visit, there's no way to describe it.
Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today and for Lynn for joining us to talk about her family's story. And if you like this video, please click like and subscribe and visit our website at www.armyhistory.org to discover more soldier stories, including that of Colin Kauffman. Thank you.